The universe may be where we live, but the vast majority of it and everything in it is very much fatal to life as we know it. For example, too much of everything can be lethal. That's why it's known as too much. Let's have a quick look at 3 things you wouldn't normally think of as poisonous, but can still permanently shut your body down. Number 1. Sugar. There are a lot of different sugars in the world, so let's start by specifying which one we mean here. We shall look at sucrose, table sugar. Sucrose consists of 1 part fructose, fruit sugar, and 1 part glucose joined together. Or, for the more complicated version of the explanation, a sucrose molecule is a disaccharide molecule formed by the combination of 2 monosaccharides, glucose and fructose. Sugar is important to us as it acts for an energy source for our body. Without energy, we cannot move or function. It's well known that too much sugar can cause weight gain, but that is not the issue we are looking at today. We shall be looking at research carried out on rats, since testing poisons on humans tends to be socially frowned upon. Before going into the details, it's worth noting that the exact details of the effects on humans and rats will likely vary, since humans are, as you probably have noticed, not the same as rats. The sugar in this case was ingested. Initial signs of sucrose poisoning in rats were decreased movement, known as hypokinesia, prostration, turning blue, known as cyanosis, bloating and diarrhea. Doses above the LD50 caused numerous other symptoms and normally killed rats who didn't survive within 10 hours. These symptoms were largely inflammations, including arteriolitis, inflammation of a type of blood vessel, and myocarditis, the heart muscle, in addition to congestion of the brain and meninges, a type of tissue covering the brain and spinal cord. For context, the LD50 is the dose required to give you a 50% chance of death. Smaller doses were still able to end rats within 48 hours, with slightly different symptoms that are arguably more unpleasant. These included, but weren't limited to, several inflammations again, hypothermia, the death of cells in the heart muscle, increased diarrhea and urine production, and, unsurprisingly, excess sugar in urine. Long-term or chronic poisoning over 100 days caused similar, although somewhat different symptoms. The safety data sheet for sucrose puts the LD50 for oral intake of sucrose in rats at 29.7 grams per kilogram of rat. In short, while you would need to eat a lot of sugar to suffer fatal consequences, it would not be a pleasant way to go. Number 2. Oxygen. As with sugar, oxygen is essential to remaining alive. However, it is also toxic in increased amounts. This is normally measured using the part of air pressure caused by the oxygen present within it. Scientifically, this is known as the partial pressure of oxygen. This pressure can be increased either by increasing the fraction of oxygen in the air, increasing the air pressure, or a combination of both. Acute oxygen poisoning mostly affects the central nervous system. This is known as the Burt effect, named after Paul Burt, who first demonstrated it in 1878 by giving larks oxygen poisoning and causing convulsions. Since then, it has been observed in many animals, including humans. While precise early symptoms vary, the most common are the twitching of muscles in the hands and near the mouth. Amongst other symptoms, continued exposure results in vertigo, nausea, and the previously mentioned convulsions. Chronic exposure to increased levels of oxygen can affect the blood vessels between your lungs and the right side of your heart, known as the pulmonary circulation. The first signs are inflammations, first to the windpipe and bronchi, known as tracheobronchitis, followed by several parts of the lungs causing breathlessness, known as acute respiratory distress syndrome, and then the tissue between the air sacs in the lungs, accompanied by scarring and thickening of the area, known as pulmonary interstitial fibrosis. Displacement of nitrogen in the lungs due to the presence of oxygen can lead to the collapse of parts of the lungs when this oxygen is then absorbed by the blood. Continued exposure can then lead to more difficult breathing. These aren't the only areas of the body which can be affected by excess oxygen though. Red blood cells, the eyes and ears can also suffer. While certainly not enjoyable, this is often survivable and many of the effects are reversible. Number 3. Water. Yes, even water can kill you, and not by drowning you. The LD50 for water when taken orally by rats is 90 grams per kilogram. This makes sucrose over 3 times as deadly as water for rats. Water poisoning mostly occurs when large amounts of water are drank over a short period of time without consuming enough substances to create electrically conducting solutions within the body. These substances are called electrolytes. The main threat from water poisoning is a very low level of sodium in the blood, known as severe hyponatremia. Water poisoning can affect the brain and cause vomiting. Acute poisoning causes excess water to move into and around the brain, known as a cerebral edema, leading to seizures along with a coma or death. While none of these poisonings are common, they are still possible. With that in mind, please try to avoid poisoning yourself with substances that you need to stay alive.